I think we're going. So we're gonna a little message first. Like, subscribe, do all that. Check my stuff out. We're getting into politics. It's gonna be fun. This is my second go at question period for today. I deleted my vial. So what do? Quit? But no. We do it again. Anyway, it was a pretty fun day on the Hill. We get to meet a lot of personalities that we don't get to see every day up there.
So oral questions.
Anyhow, jumping right into it. Here we go. Little spark plug.
To control the inflationary spending or the out-of-control cost of living or the sky-high interest rates that he has caused. He says it's not his job to bring down the price of gas, groceries, or home heating. Instead, he's raising the carbon tax. And he says it's not his job to take personal responsibility for our diplomatic relations or to vet the people who come in contact with a wartime leader. He says
what is his job?
Is not his job either. Well, the housing crisis is getting worse. If it's not his job to do anything, any of these things, what is his job?
Right.
The Ottawa Parliamentary Secretary.
I find it rather rich, Madam Speaker, with all due respect to the member, when that party's leader of the opposition,
Peter, right?
a responsibility to put forward constructive policy, when he was in opposition, in government, as minister responsible for housing, put forward a plan, $300 million, less than 100 homes built. His plan on housing today is full of holes. He tax builders, for example.
This is a good one.
Will get built under his watch, Mr. Speaker. Thank
No,
you very much.
The Honourable for Thornhill.
Maybe it's not. Maybe I misfired. Sorry.
$1 billion to double the price
Spark
of
plug.
a home, to double the price of rent, to double the price of a mortgage in Toronto.
It's expensive, right?
80% of what Canadians take home to keep a roof over their head. More liberal spending equals higher inflation,
It
which
is
leads
expensive,
to higher
guys.
interest rates, which leads to higher mortgages. So how many Canadians have to be in jeopardy of losing their homes before the Liberals stop spending, stop raising taxes, and actually start building homes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, Canadians are having a difficult time. That's why during the pandemic we put forward emergency programs that sustain the economy, individuals and families, when that party didn't want to do any of those things. Today we see a government that's put forward a plan to get more homes built. How? In partnership with provinces.
It's a good question.
That's how we're going to
Put it back on them, bro.
Not by
Peter,
measures on the other side that instill nothing but fear in the wider Canadian economy and the wider Canadian society. That's not responsible leadership.
Like that. Sharply.
Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Home building is actually down just
Little
because
spark
they have
plug.
a
Come on,
fancy
Melissa.
program or
Put it to
a new
him.
EhrenEmm every month.
Put it
It
to
doesn't
him.
mean that any of this is working. The government had a plan in 2015 to build housing on surplus land. Do you know how many homes they've built since 2015?
How many?
13. That's less than 2 a year. Liberal
Baker's
MPs
dozen.
have flipped more houses than that since 2015. It's been 8 years. We need shovels in the ground
bad number,
and not
man.
pies in the sky. So will they finally support a common sense conservative plan to actually build homes Canadians can afford?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
It's easy when you're the opposition, right?
It's a shame she wasn't at yesterday's Finance Committee, Madam Speaker, where witnesses from the Ministry of Finance confirmed that if
Are you paying
their
attention?
idea for housing was to be put in place, less homes would be
You just
built
called her out for not attending the meeting.
It's a plan that takes taxes off. The GST comes off, for example. That incents greater building, Madam Speaker. Combine that with the approach they've taken.
They're not
to
just talking to the
municipalities,
speaker.
to provinces. When it comes to ending things like exclusionary
There's things
zoning,
happening.
we want to
It's
work
interesting.
with those municipalities. We're doing that through the Housing Accelerator Fund. That will continue. The result
Maybe.
will be 200,000 to 300,000 homes built as a result.
Maybe.
The Deputy de Louis Saint-Laurent.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent.
Good.
Madam Speaker, 5 long days
With
for 5 days.
a lot of anger sometimes. This guy, he brings a lot of heat.
Brought the Nazi scandal to headlines all over the world. He hid for 5 days, and he allowed Canada's reputation to be dragged through the mud.
Yeah. Yeah.
When a country is humiliated like this, it is up to the leader of the government to protect its reputation. But what did this Liberal Prime Minister do? He hid.
But
why?
Yeah, good one. Good. Yeah. It's kind of old, but yeah. Jean-Luc Picard, beat me
Minister of
up.
Public Safety. Oh, no, that's not quite right. But thank you, Madam
Jean-Yves.
Speaker. The former Speaker of the House, as my colleague knows very well, has clearly stated that he was the
Clown
only person
circus.
responsible for having invited
Clowns.
this person to the House and for recognizing him. It was his initiative. And no other parliamentarian or the government was
Who
involved
is
or
this
informed.
guy, man?
The former Speaker invited his own guests for the speech on Friday, and they were chosen by him and his own office.
Maybe he's a hard
As
worker.
soon as we learned about this horrible event that occurred in the House, the Prime Minister recognized that it was very painful for all Canadians and all those who have suffered
Whatever, man.
due to the Holocaust.
From a
The
pad,
honourable
that's
member.
lame.
Madam Speaker, after 8 years of this Liberal government, Quebecers are struggling. We learned in the Journal de Montréal that according to a survey, 51% of young Quebecers are living from paycheck to paycheck.
Keep it
And
cool,
that's
Sherrod.
not good for anyone, because when youth is
Calm down,
traumatized,
bro.
well, the entire future is at stake for Canada and Quebec. During this difficult time for our youth, what is
Down.
the genius idea of this Liberal government supported by the Bloc Québécois inventing a second carbon tax?
His nice
Voting for
colors
the
of
Bloc
hair,
has a
though.
price. Why does
It's a
the
good
Liberal
look.
Bloc think that this is a good idea to grab even more money out of the pockets of young Quebecers and to levy a second carbon tax? The Honourable
Ooh.
Minister of Transport.
Only to get trumped by a
My
better
colleague wants
head
to
of
talk
hair.
about costs.
Pablo
How much does it
Rodriguez
cost
is
when
on
our
fire.
forests
Look how
burn?
hot he is.
When
Old
our
man
lakes
hot.
and rivers flood, how much does destroyed infrastructure
Most interesting
cost?
man in the
What about
world.
the price on our children's health when they breathe dirty air? What does that cost? Clearly, we don't have the
Yeah.
means to put up with a conservative government.
When I drink
Madam
this.
Speaker, Canada's greenhouse gas emissions did not go down last year. Instead, they grew by 2.1%.
I need some help with the last names.
And that's almost entirely
Normandian?
due to one sector. With the
Normandin?
5 biggest companies brought in $200 billion in profit last year.
Normandin, right? Sorry to interrupt, guys.
A sector
I'm
that has
rude.
received billions of dollars in subsidies to pollute less, but it's actually increasing Canada's emissions. And
Dimples.
what sector is that? Well, it's oil and gas, of course. When will the government stop filling their pockets with public money? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. Thank you, Madam
Old
Speaker. I'd
Stephen
like to
needs a
thank my honourable
haircut,
colleague for
but
the
he's a
question,
cool
and
guy.
I have great news for her. Canada
As far as little hands go, like small
is the
hands,
first country in the G20 to eliminate subsidies to
and
the
a
oil
coat
gas
that is
sector.
too big that
We're
you
the
wear
first
too
country to have
often.
done that 2 years before the deadline in 2025. We did that
Still
this year,
pretty
and we are going to
entertaining
eliminate
guy.
public funding to
Bet
fossil
you
fuels,
he's
and we are
fun.
the only G20 country to have made that commitment. Canada
Do you-
is
do
fighting
you
climate
think
change, and it's working.
that
We
any
have
of
the
these
best record of any
clowns are
country in
excited
the
that
G7.
very
From
soon
2019
it's
and 2021,
the end
out
of the
all
day and
countries in the
happy
G7
hour for the
reducing
whole
emissions.
weekend, long
The
weekend,
honourable
I
member,
think.
Madam Speaker, 2.1% increase in greenhouse gas emissions due to the oil and gas sector, but the government isn't turning the screws on the sector. Instead, it's giving them more money. Last week, it announced that it wanted
Turn
to
the
double oil
screws.
production off Newfoundland. These companies are increasing all of Canada's emissions, but the federal government is actually making it easier for them to pollute even more instead of doing the opposite. When will this government stop being part of the problem?
It's a good question. Good question. It's probably not going to get a direct
Honourable
answer
Minister.
here in question
Thank
period.
you, Madam Speaker. And I would invite my honourable colleague to read our plan to fight climate change.
I don't understand the
Environmentalists,
flattery
scientists,
thing. Like
municipalities, the city of
my
Montreal,
good
and many
friend
others
on
have
the,
all
who
said it's a
just
great
like
plan,
threw
which
shit
shows
at
that,
the
like all
job
other
I'm
sectors in
doing.
Canada, the oil and gas
I can't
sector will have to
imagine.
do its fair share.
Can you?
And that is why we already have
Maybe
a
this
resolution
is
that
what
will
your
reduce
workplace
methane
is like.
emissions
Mine's not.
by
Everybody
at
that I
least
work with is
40% by
pretty nice.
2025, and that
But
is a very serious type of emission. And we also have the clean fuel standard to force
imagine arguing
gas and
like
diesel
this
producers to
every day.
reduce the impact.
I could do it for the money, but like,
Madam Speaker, it pains me to say that Saskatchewan has one of the highest rates
yeah,
of child poverty.
Bobby Lee in the
country.
House. I didn't
But
know
instead
Bobby
of
Lee was an
ensuring they
MP
don't
in
go
Parliament.
hungry,
Did you?
The Conservative government of Saskatchewan
Kidding.
wants to use
I
the
like his
notwithstanding
mustache.
clause
Like
to save a policy
Desjardins.
the judge would said
a cool
was
guy.
causing irreparable
Bolo.
harm. Is that what Conservatives stand for?
Oh, yeah.
Dividing people and trampling on human rights? That doesn't sound like common sense to me.
Yeah,
Now, will
it's
the
decorated,
government do
nice. He
everything they can
dressed up
to
pretty
stop the
well
harm
this morning.
against Canadian
It's a
children?
weird kind. I think that's a
The Honourable Parliamentary
interesting
Secretary to
outfit,
the Minister of Justice and
interesting
Attorney General.
jacket.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for this
Maybe
very
Bobby
important
Lee will
question.
be back
We're fully
up.
aware of the government of Saskatchewan's
There's
proposed
Maloney,
use
no
of the notwithstanding
phony
clause.
Maloney
We are
here.
dead set against the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause in any circumstances.
Nope.
Notwithstanding clause is intended to protect minority rights, not suppress them. In light of the decision by the court of Saskatchewan yesterday, we would have thought that the government of Saskatchewan would have taken a moment to pause, reflect, and wait until the process played itself out. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Nunavut.
Woo. Quick. Why don't we get some likes or subscriptions or whatever? Check me out. We'll be doing this all the time.
Homes are overcrowded,
Sorry, Lori.
molded, and spaces where dreams vanish. Children have no space to do homework. Women have no space to flee abusive partners. Inuit and
So, just for a moment, yeah, subscribe or like or whatever. We're going to learn how they're making the sausage. And we're going to investigate and get more educated. Because you can't just complain about something you don't understand. So we're going to learn together. And we're getting it right here. Parliamentary question period. We'll get to the bottom of it.
To advance reconciliation, we need to close the gap between Indigenous people and the rest of Canada, as well as address the harms that is caused through colonization and underfunding. Our government is committed to doing that. We have a tremendous
this is Jamie, I think.
Record of first in our country for Indigenous people. We'll continue to make those progress, and I thank the member. And
I'm interested about his medal, or medallion, or whatever that is.
The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Batiste, right?
Ago, under this Prime Minister's watch, a Nazi was welcomed in this place.
Wearing my mom's sweater.
In his chamber. Now, when the Prime Minister should have been a statesman
Rachel
and taken
Thomas.
full responsibility, instead he chose to flee and hide. Not just for one day,
What
not
do you
just
think
for
of
2
this
days,
shit?
but actually for 5 days. For 5 days he was mute. For 5 days he watched as our reputation was
Where do you
tarnished.
think,
For
like,
5 days,
Sean
he was in hiding.
Fraser-
For 5 days. He utterly embarrassed our
Christina
country. The Prime Minister has yet
Freeland,
to take responsibility.
the Prime
Will he stand
Minister,
up,
Pierre
do the right
Poilievre.
thing, and
Look
do
at
that?
all of these empty seats here. Like, that's, your taxes are paying for them to be in those seats.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The former speaker has made it
Not to
very
get you
clear
riled
that
up,
he
but,
alone
like, it's a
was
total waste of money.
responsible for inviting this individual to
Jean-Luc,
the House and recognizing
goddamn.
him. It was his initiative, and no other parliamentarians nor the government
state
were
of
involved.
affairs.
The former speaker invited his own guests for Friday's address, which were determined by him and his own office. No advance notice was provided to the Prime Minister's office, nor to the Ukrainian delegation about the invitation or the recognition. There are many Canadians who are hurt by this, and this mistake has been especially difficult for Jewish, Ukrainian, and
The honourable member for
He
Lethbridge.
can't even finish his reading his paper. Like, at least finish reading the paper. God.
Take personal responsibility when a mistake happens.
Yeah.
And
Nail
yet,
him.
instead, he chose to flee. He chose
That
to
was
hide.
lame. That was one of the worst. What?
Why? Why? Why not take personal responsibility? Why not remedy this on the world stage?
I will be on
Why
her
not
side, probably.
Acknowledge the grave atrocities.
I'm just
that
a
have
human
taken place in
being.
our history and the mistake that was made here.
What
in
are
this
you?
House and the impact that that would have on Canadians.
Comment,
So I'll
like,
give
make
him an
jokes or,
opportunity today.
like,
Would he
say something
honorably
funny in
stand
the
up,
comments.
take that personal responsibility, and apologize to Canadians?
It's for a laugh. This is a clown show. You're watching a clown show.
Thank you,
This
Madam
is how we
Speaker.
do it.
Again, the former speaker has made it very
Whoa,
clear that
beam
he
me up.
alone was responsible for inviting this individual to the House and
Number
recognizing
one.
him. It was his initiative, and no one in this House knew of that.
Oh, man, it's
The Prime
lame.
Minister, the
Response
same day
is
we learned
boring.
of this horrendous
Maybe
incident,
that's why
but
Katrina
during the House, the Prime
took
Minister
the day off
recognized
and
on the same day
Trudeau
that this
played
was
hooky all week.
painful for
They just didn't
Canadians
want to
and
listen to this shit.
Who were affected by the Holocaust.
Ah, come on.
The honourable member for Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Boring.
Yesterday in the Finance Committee, this government's own department,
Get a razor,
the
Philip.
Finance Committee, that in fact in 2018 they warned the Liberal government of an impending housing crisis, yet they did nothing. Incredibly, CMHC officials went on to say that the policies currently employed by the federal government are not
He's
sufficient to solve
hungover,
the housing problem.
and
If in fact
he's still
this government's
not
own
going from the
department
pad,
doesn't
so-
believe in this Liberal government, why should Canadians?
Who's that old guy behind you?
The honourable parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Infrastructure.
Wake him up. Peter.
infrastructure.
Peter, Pumpkin Eater, come on.
Infrastructure and communities. I knew there was one.
Whatever, some
Thank
title.
you, Madam Speaker. I would remind my honourable colleague to look at the actual record and to look at the actions of that opposition leader who this summer, while presenting himself as some sort of champion of the working class, stood in front of a Canadian's home, took a video, and called that home a
I think
shack.
they all think they're
If he is
winners.
serious about dealing with affordability and the housing crisis and the supply crisis that underpins it, I want to hear from him and his party serious plans along the lines of what we've presented on this side. We're going to continue.
Peter's trying to flip it back.
Members, if they want to
He's
have
trying to turn it
conversations
around.
while answers and questions are being asked, they should take their conversations outside. The honourable member for Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Madam Speaker, Canada's problems are real. We have incredible food bank usage. We have housing costs doubling. Millions of Canadians cannot afford their own homes, yet this side decides to play games. Back when the leader of the opposition was
How are you doing with your mortgage? I'm nervous about mine. I've been living by myself for 15 years. I've had this house for 10. And I'm probably going to have to take somebody in, like as a roommate or something. It's ridiculous.
You know what else they do? They also
Standard
vote
of living.
against tax cuts for the middle class. They also vote against child care for kids. They vote against dental
What do you
care
think?
for kids. Discussions
Like,
of
subscribe.
pharmacare are happening
Join me.
at this time. That side wants to entertain none of it. At a time when Canadians are facing real challenges of affordability, government can be there to help. This government has put serious measures on the table. It's having an effect. We're gonna continue to do that. They should wake up and come to the party.
It's all a clown circus, man. But it's somewhat engaging, right? Like, we'll continue to watch. Sorry to interrupt.
97%.
Mad TV.
That's the share of income a household would need to cover home ownership costs now in Vancouver. This from a new RBC report, which
She
says
looks like that
housing
chick from Mad
affordability
TV,
in
right?
most major Canadian cities is near all-time worst levels. The Prime
I like her
Minister
color.
also
I
holds
like
the
her shirt.
all-time
Pardon me.
record
I like
for
her shirt
incurring more
color.
debt during his 8 years than all other prime ministers combined. Housing is less affordable than ever. This prime minister is just not worth the cost. Will the prime minister finally stop his inflationary spending so Canadians can keep a roof over their head?
Kind of a dumb question because yes, the prime minister is done.
Remind the honourable member, Madam Speaker, that Canada has the lowest deficit and debt.
Sean Fraser should have shown up today. He would have got a lot
We
of
understand that.
time on the
Housing affordability,
stage.
What are we doing? The supply crisis that underpins the housing
Peter
crisis
guy.
in front of the country is
He's
one that
okay, I
requires
guess.
building. That's why we've lifted GST for the purposes
I like
of
his
rental
tie.
construction on apartments. That's why we've made changes to the borrowing limit of the Canada Mortgage Bond. I don't
What
want
do
to
you
get into
think
the
of this
technical details because they are vast. The result is more homes built for Canadians. That's what we're going to continue to do.
Sean Fraser would get out there and start doing his bird
The
flapping.
OECD says in the G7 that Canada has the biggest gap
Yeah.
between housing prices and Canadian wages. The finance minister said her plan to bring down inflation is working, and yet it has soared to 4%. Mortgage interest costs have also soared now to 31%. So it's no wonder Mortgage Pro's recent survey showed 48% of young
Nicole
people say
Sullivan
they've
is the
given
name I'm
up
thinking
on
of.
ever owning a
Nicole
home.
Sullivan.
Now,
She
this
looks
NDP
just
Liberal government
like
spending
Nicole
is
Sullivan
driving
from
up
Mad
inflation,
TV, right?
Which is driving up interest rates, which is driving up mortgage interest costs. Will the Prime Minister finally stop his inflationary spending so Canadians can keep a roof over their head?
I assure you, that would not be the first time she's heard that.
Just speak for themselves, but I highlight them for you. In July of 2022,
Kind of boring. Nice
we had
tie,
inflation at over
but you're
8%.
boring.
That is now down to 4%. Certainly not low enough, but we see progress on that front, Madam Speaker. I also hear all sorts of ideas from the other side, Madam Speaker, that won't have a tangible impact in terms of affordability. Let's just take pensions, by the way. I've heard
By the
nothing
way,
from that side at all with respect to Premier Smith's pension plan that would deplete the fund by
Easy, back up.
53%.
That's provincial.
Combine that with their focus or lack of focus on EI, they voted against all these measures that will...
This system is so messed up. They're not allowed to talk about provincial issues at a federal...
Madam Speaker, let's talk about Chalk River, a project to bury nuclear waste near the Outaouais River. the chiefs of several First Nations have joined their voices to a broad opposition movement in Quebec.
Yeah,
they are concerned about the impact on the river. They are concerned that there will be a nuclear landfill near their sacred lands. They are concerned, but no
so
one
yeah,
has helped them, which is a direct violation
just
of the
an
UN
interesting
rights
side
of
note
Indigenous peoples.
would be that
When will this government finally listen to them and put an end to the Chalk River project?
let's go back to
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Speaker, Canadians' health and safety, reconciliation, and protecting the environment are all major priorities. When it comes to our nuclear policy, the project is currently being reviewed by the Commission. And according to that review, all nuclear waste in Canada is being handled safely according to international standards in appropriate facilities, which are overseen by our world-class
it sucks when they read
Nuclear
from the
Safety
pad.
Commission. Thank you very much. The Honourable Member. Madam Speaker, the first thing to do would be to at least give a minimum amount of respect to the concerns of First Nations. Chief Heyman from the Kipawek Nation has written to the Prime Minister and never got an answer. The federal government should at least pause the Chalk River project
that messes
and
the
ensure
volume
that
up
First
a lot.
Nations are listened to.
We will see. I hope not.
But at the very least, could Ottawa do the very minimum when it comes to a nation-to-nation relationship? It should at least respond to the letter from the Kipawek Nation.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you very much for the question.
I acknowledge
Jamie
that,
Batiste,
we have work to
bro,
do on
go
this
get
file.
her.
I know that this is something that might be coming before the INAN committee, but we look forward to hearing from the chiefs, hearing from the opposite member, and working with them to ensure that we're fulfilling our obligations under UNDRIP and our duty to consult. Thank you.
The Honourable Member Selkirk into Lake Eastman.
We learned yesterday these
quick
Liberals
answer.
are cutting another $1 billion from our
James
armed
Bazan
forces.
is
This
usually
in addition to the
he's
$2.5
gonna get
billion
fired up, I
they've
bet.
already let lapse last year.
It's Friday.
But the Prime Minister has no problem on wasting taxpayer money and running up massive deficits on things like the $160 million for McKinsey, $54 million on the ArriveCan app, $20 million bonuses on the Bank of Canada of executives, and let's not forget they allowed $4.6 billion of abuse under their COVID programs. These Liberals waste money on just about everything except our military. Why does the Prime Minister only cut spending when it hurts our troops?
That's right.
The Honourable Minister.
I think Trudeau hates the troops. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's not true. I don't know.
By years when they
You
reduced
know?
defense expenditures
Comment.
below 1% of our GDP.
Billy Blair.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, we are committed to the significant and strategic long-term
Look
investments
at Lisa
that will
Kudrow over
ensure
there.
that CAF continues to function as an agile, combat-ready force, capable of making tangible contributions and delivering on our commitments. And at the same time, Madam Speaker, we must ensure that all expenditures are carefully
There's so
controlled
many
so that each
empty
dollar
seats. Look
produces
at
real
how
value
many
for
empty
Canadians.
seats. Like on Friday, like if
I would
people
just,
aren't sick, they should
ask
be at
members
work,
to
or
keep
if
their
they're not
thoughts
on
to
vacation.
themselves when
That's
it's not-
fine if
when
you
they're
are.
not being
But
recognized. The Honourable Member Caribou Prince George.
so many
This
empty
Prime Minister is
seats.
failing our most vulnerable
Oh,
of
Todd
Canadians. Our
Doherty.
country is gripped in the worst drug and crime crisis in generations. And last night we learned that this Prime Minister and the BC NDP are using taxpayer dollars to fund a group that buys drugs on the black market and then hands them out on the streets of Vancouver.
Do you think that's true?
We can't get people into recovery, but we can perpetuate their addiction and support organized crime.
Do you think that's true what he
When
said?
will this Prime Minister put a stop to his failed drug policy and finally take real action
I like his
and
tie.
end this crisis?
Nice tie, Todd.
The Honourable Minister.
You think he's
Madam Speaker, I don't think
Speaking
there's a
the
single member of this House that doesn't mourn the tragic loss of anyone through
Yaroslav.
this overdose crisis. But I have to say, Madam Speaker, to the member across the way, spreading misinformation about and conflating harm reduction and treatment loses lives rather than saving them. Madam Speaker, the provinces are responsible for providing safe supply, prescriptions, to clients who need help as they go through recovery. Madam Speaker, on this
It's kinda
side
hard
of
to
the House,
pick
we
on
will
this
continue
woman.
to save
She
lives.
seems really
They should
nice.
get on board with us with that, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member
Why are you a politician? Who got you
Madam
into this
Speaker,
shit?
after 8 years under this Liberal
Oh,
government,
my
it's clear
dad
that
did.
the rights of victims and their families are
Hungover,
not
his
a
mom
priority.
didn't brush his hair
Correctional
the right
Services Canada,
way.
with the full knowledge knowledge of this government, transferred Canada's most notorious killer to a medium security prison. Public safety officials even wanted to keep it quiet, and victims' families were only notified after the fact.
I don't
At
know,
committee,
man.
Conservatives are calling for this government to let victims' voices be heard, but the Liberals
probably a
are
good
refusing
career
to allow
choice,
it.
like,
Why is this Liberal government trying to cover
for
up this
a guy like
outrageous
you.
affair, and why are they shamefully blocking the voices of victims from being heard?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Madam Speaker, it's clear that member opposite is distancing himself
Phoebe
from the truth
makes an
once again.
appearance.
In fact, all members of the committee came together to bring forward.
I'm sorry.
What? Bring back Phoebe. Come on.
So I think that, you know.
Dun, 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 dun.
Order.
The Friends song?
I think all members on all sides actually have used these things. So I just want to say I want to ask members to please be careful with their words, and you can't do indirectly what you can't do.
Who is this
directly.
speaker?
The Honourable
Carol
Parliamentary
Hughes.
Secretary.
Nice. Good.
Well, Madam Speaker,
Good to know.
let me clarify the facts.
Wonder how
for the
much
member
she,
opposite.
extra she
What
gets paid to
happened
be
at Public Safety Committee
directing
was
the
that
circus.
all members of the
Orchestrating.
committee came together to come
Boop,
forward
boop,
to do a
boop,
study
do-do-do-do.
on putting forward the rights of victims in crime, to look into how reclassifications are handled and how transfers are handled. And you know what happened, Madam Speaker? The Conservatives voted against it. They talk tough in front of the cameras, but when it comes to act, they do nothing.
Calm down, Phoebe. Woo.
The Honourable Member for Beauce. Madam Speaker, after 8 years, the Liberals still don't seem to understand how to help our farmers, who are the ones who put food on our
Richard.
tables.
Little
With their
Richard.
Partners in the Bloc Québécois.
Oh,
They
he's a good
seem
guy.
to prefer forcing families into the street
Very-
instead of getting rid of the carbon
Imagine
tax.
how smooth
In
that
fact, they would
skin
like to see it
is.
radically increased. They are feeding the inflationary fire.
Freshly
They want to make
frozen
the cost of
ice.
living even higher. When you vote for the Bloc, you pay a high price. When will
When
the
you-
Liberal
that's a
Bloc
good
coalition
line.
put an end
You
to
vote-
the
that's
infamous
a-
carbon tax and finally listen to our common sense Conservatives?
All his
The Honourable
buddies,
Minister
like,
of the Environment and Climate Change.
yeah. Oh, nice.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to remind my honourable colleague that federal
I
carbon
bet you
pricing
this
not
guy is
apply in
actually
Quebec.
pretty cool.
Quebec, for many years, has had its
I bet you
own
they're all
cap
pretty
and trade
cool. It's just,
system.
what a
I'd
first.
also like
This
to remind my colleague
shit. Look
that
at how many
common
empty
sense
seats.
Is certainly not to ignore the impacts of
They
climate
know
change
there's
on
television
farmers
cameras or
throughout
cameras,
the country,
like-
especially in Quebec. I often meet farmers
Television,
who are
just
experiencing
cameras,
the impacts
right?
of
By
climate
now,
change.
like media
Drought,
cameras.
too much heat, not enough heat, pests. We haven't heard anything from the Conservatives about what they would do to help our farmers face these problems.
The Hamilton Community Foundation's Vital Signs report says that for
Matthew
every new
Green
unit
is
of
gonna
affordable housing built,
let them know
Hamilton
what
is
the NDP
losing
thinks.
23
The
units.
jump on
It also
board
confirms
party.
what tenants have already
Federally,
always
it's a
known, that
disaster.
corporate
Honestly,
landlords
they
are
used to
evicting
represent the
tenants to
people.
jack up the rents at a record rate
What do they
while
represent
leaving
now?
Hamiltonians
Like
out in the
piggybacking,
cold.
like
This Liberal government is leaving people to fend for
making
themselves,
a
while
minority
big
government
developers
into a
are
majority.
cashing in on what's left of our city's
I
rental
had
apartment
such hope
buildings.
for
So,
Jamaica,
Madam Speaker,
but
will this government adopt our NDP
Kinda
affordable
felt
housing
let
plan
down
to
with-
create an acquisition fund to save the affordable rentals left in Hamilton?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the
Sounds
Minister
like
of
tough
Housing,
times in
Infrastructure and
Hamilton.
Communities.
Sorry,
I know
Hamilton.
that
Like,
member has a
God
passion
love
for
peace.
dealing with homelessness and addressing issues of affordability more generally.
Peter will
This
straighten
government
it,
has put
straighten it all out.
substantial investment
You know
forward through the
what's
National
wrong
Housing
with
Strategy
things in
to combat
Hamilton.
homelessness. It is a difficult challenge for sure, but one that we're getting results on. It's not over, that fight continues, and combined with efforts to build more, lifting GST from rental construction,
good
for
answer.
example, the changes to the Canada mortgage bond borrowing limit, all of these
I am
things combined
petrified
with
about my
bottom line is producing
remortgage.
more
When
homes built.
when I remortgage
Is the result
every
from
5
that.
years, I think you have to do that. When you're poor, you have to.
Heard my
And
question, but clearly he wasn't
it's
listening.
probably not gonna be
because
good.
if he were, he would know that the winter months are approaching and that it's going to be life or death for the increasing number of people
people who are being left onto the streets to live in tent encampments. Cities like Hamilton are facing double-digit property tax increases in order to fill the crucial gaps in funding for social housing. In Hamilton, that's a 7-year wait list. This is life or death, Madam Speaker. So, will this government immediately
life or
respond
death,
to the
man.
Federation of
Come
Canadian
on.
Municipalities' demand for direct funding in order to repair existing social housing units in order to address our 7-year wait list?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, we have been there for cities like Hamilton and other Canadian cities and towns through programs like Reaching Home, through the Rapid Housing
Like,
Initiative,
subscribe.
and in other ways to help
Check us out.
not-for-profits that are on the ground
It's only going to
doing
get
the very
better.
hard work. I know that member
And
cares obviously
turning a
very
blind
much
eye
about
to
this
this
issue.
shit
I'm happy
isn't going to make
have
it
further
go away.
discussions with him,
Find
but I go
out
back to the
how
point
they
that
make
we're
the
going to
sausage in the
advance
sausage
issues around this
factory.
by
We don't like that meat.
collaboration with the private sector, with the not-for-profit sector, with municipalities
Steps,
as well.
progressions.
The honourable member for Northwest
Subscribe.
Territories.
Madam Speaker, tomorrow is National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It's a day that recognizes First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children who were separated from their families, their culture, and their communities.
I feel for all of the natives through history, they got bamboozled.
Our government will be there
At
to
best,
work with
that's
Indigenous
the
people.
best term
Can
you
the
could,
Parliamentary Secretary
I
and the
can
Minister
use.
of Crown and Indigenous Relations update the House on our government's record on reconciliation? Monsieur.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Crown and Indigenous Relations.
Madam Speaker, when it comes to Indigenous issues,
But we got this
the record
guy.
of the Leader of the Opposition is almost
So
as
you can't
shameful as
throw
his
any
comments.
native dirt at us without Jamie, but he's coming in.
Just want to remind members
Taking the brunt.
that we need to ensure that we have respect here in the House, and I know that the honourable members would like to hear the answers.
Who is this
The
lady?
Honourable Parliamentary
Carol,
Secretary.
come on.
Madam Speaker, when it comes to Indigenous issues, the shameful record of the Leader of the Opposition on his voting is almost
Get
as
off
shameful as his
the
words
pad,
were. He
Jamie.
said, "Instead of
No, it doesn't look good, bro. Every time you do it, watch. They're going to see when I look.
need to learn the value of hard work. In contrast, our government
They're going to
has a
see
record
that
of
I look,
historical firsts.
just like
The
they see you.
passing UNDRIP into law, the first ever Indigenous Language Commissioner, the first ever Indigenous Governor General, the first ever Indigenous Supreme Court Justice, all stand on record on our historic first every day, including the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation.
It's not a good speech, but you can't be doing it from a pad, bro. It's
Some
less
interruptions
effective.
going on while members are speaking. Again, I would just ask members to please hold off to any questions they may have or thoughts.
No.
Order. 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 Again, if individuals want to have conversations, they should take them out. Order.
This is coming from
What?
a guy that called
Order.
Indigenous women crackers.
Somebody in the background is
If
pissed
this
off.
continues, someone's going to end up losing a question. So.
Somebody in the background is pissed off. I'm not sure who.
Questions and comments?
Like,
The honourable
subscribe,
member for Bow
whatever.
River. Oh, sorry.
Let's do it.
Calgary Heritage.
Here we go.
8 long years of
8 long years.
NDP Liberal government. Diplomatic disaster after diplomatic disaster. 1 in 5 Canadians are skipping meals. Crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder rage across our streets. A carbon tax making gas, groceries, and home heating more expensive. A tax that does nothing to achieve climate targets. A tax inflating everything.
Times are tough, yeah.
Devastating
Like, do you not
everyone.
find that?
When
Like,
will the Prime Minister finally axe the tax?
I used to be able to save a little bit of money.
L'honorable ministre.
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker,
Much
last week
less
during
now.
the United Nations Climate Ambition Summit in New York, I was at an event with West Kelowna's Fire Chief Jason Brolin.
He needs to do
Chief
some
Brolin
push-ups or
vividly described the
This
trauma
fellow
of
with the
fighting
upper
this summer's
part of his
massive
jacket.
wildfires, of
But
sending
he's
team
slim,
into
or
danger, of fighting to
not a
protect
big
homes
guy.
and lives. It was a miracle that no one died in Kelowna. He called it a once-in-a-lifetime fire, but then told us it was the second once-in-a-lifetime fire he has faced in 20 years.
It's a good
That's
line.
the impacts of climate change, Madam Speaker.
What did your note say?
After 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, Alberta farmers and families are paying more tax
Check it
than
out.
ever. When you tax stamp
Check out
seeds
the
that
mustache
grow
on
the
this
food,
brother.
Reimer Trucking that ships the food, Droz Farms that process the food, Sunterra Market who sells the food. You're taxing everyone who buys the food. This Prime Minister is just not worth it. Alberta farmers need to keep feeding the world. Will
like
the
his
Prime
tie
Minister
too.
axe his carbon tax?
That mustache is worth a couple of claps.
Madam Speaker,
Like,
we've
subscribe,
seen the impact of climate change devastating
Oh, Billy Blair!
across this country and impacting
Billy.
most significantly
Come on.
our farmers. In winter, we saw record cold temperatures leading to damaged homes, businesses, and crop results. Canadian farmers are on the front line of climate change, and that is exactly why, Madam Speaker, we're investing nearly $500 million in programs like the Agricultural Technology Program and the Climate Solutions Program, and we'll continue to do everything that is necessary to help our farmers deal with the increasing effects of climate change. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yep.
Honourable member
Madam
for
Speaker.
Rivière-du-Loup.
There
Madam
we
Speaker,
go.
the Bloc
Super boring.
is doing its best to convince Quebecers that the carbon tax has no impact in
Bernard Generaux.
Quebec. Nothing could be further from the truth. Everything that is transported from one province to another and ends up in our stores costs more because of this tax. Everything, including voting for the Bloc, is more expensive.
I'm not a fan of the carbon tax.
After
Are
8 years
you?
Of this government,
Do you think we're
many
helping the
Quebecers are
environment
feeling
with
the
that
pinch.
money?
Will this Prime Minister finally cancel this costly Bloc Liberal tax?
I think the environment is in trouble. I just don't think that's an efficient way to get money to put towards
Madam Speaker,
that.
I find those attacks on the Bloc very
Pablo,
mean.
my
But
man!
If the Conservatives
What up?
had any interest at all in the economy in Quebec, they would have highlighted the historic announcement yesterday. We're going to create 3,000 jobs. We're going to look to the future and produce the greenest batteries in the world, Madam Speaker. 3,000 direct jobs, many more indirect jobs, green batteries in cars around the world, and they're not even talking about it. That's what the Conservatives are about. They don't care about Quebec at all.
Is that true?
The Honourable
What he
Member
just
for
said, is that
Montmagny-Isla
true?
Kamouraska Rivière-du-Loup. Madam Speaker, the Bloc said it wanted to radically increase the carbon tax. While the Liberals
That is the
granted
first
their
time I've
wish,
ever seen anybody
there's
in
a
another
second
language
carbon tax that
use
also
the
applies in Quebec. According to the Parliamentary Budget Officer,
quotation
it will add
marks.
17 cents to the price
They
of a
do
liter
that. That's
of
cool.
gasoline.
That's fun. Did
The
you know
Bloc
that?
Liberal
I
Alliance
didn't.
is always looking to dig deeper into Quebecers' pockets. It doesn't make any sense, Madam Speaker.
Comment,
Will the Prime
share,
Minister
share.
put an end to his inflationary taxes? The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Thank you, Madam Speaker. In 2023, it's unbelievable and even immoral that a political party that wants to form the government
fun.
has nothing to say about climate change. When tens of thousands of people were displaced this summer because
Little
of
man,
forest
come on.
fires, we could smell the smoke in New York and even in Europe.
He's always speaking French,
the
though.
official
You
position
never
of the
hear him in
Conservative Party of
English.
Canada was that climate
it'd be
change
fun to
don't
hear him in
exist.
English.
When it
Or
costs
use his
tens
voice,
of billions of
'cause-
dollars to Canadians. It's
It's
scandalous,
okay this
Madam
way,
Speaker.
but
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Madam Speaker, it's very concerning what Radio-Canada
What up,
has
Eve?
revealed about the closeness between the big GMO companies and the federal government. They're so close that they play on the same team, dubbed the Tiger Team. A team of lobbyists
Tiger
from
Team,
giants
Team
such as
Tiger.
Bayer, but also federal officials
Actually,
who
what he's
allegedly
saying,
drafted the
if
genome
we're
editing
listening.
regulations together. It's worse than the fox in the hen house. It's the fox in charge of the hen house.
sorry, he just made a
Will the
really
government
great
mandate
point
truly independent
about how the
experts to
drug
re-examine
companies
all the
and their
regulatory
lobbyists
changes
control
made
the
under
government.
the Tiger Team.
Kind of surprised. Maybe he's like kind of feeling cut out because he didn't get his share. Billy Blair's gonna
from the
straighten
organic,
it out.
conventional, and seed sectors to find new food production solutions to feed the world's growing population.
Yeah.
It is common practice for the government to actively engage with implicated stakeholders when discussing regulatory matters.
Imagine
The
how
Tiger
nice
Team
his-
process was intended as a
Yeah.
time-limited mechanism through which
Maybe
multiple
his-
stakeholders in the grain supply chain would have an opportunity to provide their views on a very complex topic of plant breeding and innovation. And Madam Speaker, we will continue doing all that we can to support Canada's farmers and farm families.
I could just imagine a world where Billy Blair has
Honourable
a
Member for
kind wife who's
Berthier-Masquinongé.
really sweet.
Madam Speaker,
That's all.
it makes
That's
no
all I
sense
meant.
to let the people
Wasn't
who
even
make money
making
from
fun.
a product decide the rules that apply to their product.
But there's an issue with these
It's even
drug
worse
policies.
when we're talking about food and people's health.
Like,
How can we let a company like
Christ.
Bayer write the rules on GMOs and genome editing? We now need to reassure people there's a
people
breach
might
of
not
trust.
understand, but
Only
like
a
drugs
rigorous
are
review
like
of the
addictive
regulatory
to everybody.
uptake
Like
by
I would never get
truly
addicted.
independent
Yes, you
experts
would.
Can repair this total lack
You
of
would.
judgment on the part of the government. When
if
will
you
it
got
launch
duped
this
like
review?
so many people do?
The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Madam
Just
Speaker.
so you know,
I thank my
you
honourable
would.
colleague for
Like,
his
you're not
question.
better than that.
This is why myself, the former Minister of Agriculture and Health, have
Heroin.
worked together to put in place the reforms he's talking about. That's what led to the federal government's announcement that there will no longer be pesticides used on federal lands, which led to a review of the way we approve pesticides in Canada, and that we allow.
Is
more
this true what
independent
they're saying
scientists
about, like, there's no more
look at the
pesticides?
review
I
of
can't
each of these
imagine
pesticides.
that that's true.
We are undertaking that review that the honourable colleague is asking us to do. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
For Miramichi Grand Lake.
Madam Speaker,
Here
Atlantic
we go.
Canadians are
This guy
struggling
looks
to pay for
just
their
like my
groceries,
cousin
gas, and
Alan.
home heating.
Like,
Meanwhile, the Atlantic Liberal MPs
Right?
support measures to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. Atlantic Liberal MPs have continued to
just,
support
but
carbon
similar,
taxes since
you know.
2015. Will the Atlantic Liberal MPs vote on the Conservative motion next week to axe the tax so Atlantic Canadians can afford gas, groceries, and home heating?
maybe it is my cousin Alan. I haven't talked to him in a while.
Secretary.
First, important
Who's
question.
this guy?
Madam Speaker, let's talk about what's important for Atlantic Canadian. Earlier this week,
Daryl
I
Sampson.
stood here and listened to Conservative and
He's a-
Atlantic
he's a
Conservatives
cabinet
from
minister.
Atlantic Canada vote and are voting against
Good for you.
the Atlantic Accord that gives Canada an opportunity, gives Nova Scotia
All right,
and
that's
Newfoundland
all
and
right.
Labrador an opportunity.
It's okay.
To find prosperity and also meet our green goals. Madam Speaker, I'm hoping that they vote for the Atlantic Accord and those changes to help Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada. Thank you.
It's a good one. Get him fired up for a happy. You give him the. Yeah, he
One
knows.
title project, and I invite the member opposite to tell the people of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia
snake,
choosing
man.
between fueling their car and purchasing groceries how the carbon tax is not punishing them every single day.
The carbon taxes.
Allege they are not in favor of the carbon taxes while back home.
Imagine if you were somebody. I plan for a living. Imagine.
Again, they
If
claim
you-
that they now are against it. The carbon tax, will they put their money where their mouth is and vote next week to axe the tax?
L'honorable ministre de l'Environnement.
The
Good
Honourable
one,
Minister
Jake.
of
Good.
the
That's
Environment
good.
and Climate Change.
I would like to remind my honourable colleague that his
English,
party
good for
campaigned
Stephen.
on putting in place a price on pollution in Canada in the 2021 election. But what I find interesting, and I would like to pick on what my colleague was saying, why is the Conservative Party opposing the development of clean energy in Canada? Like the moratorium that Premier Smith has put in place in Alberta, which is putting at risk $30
It's a fair
billion
question, like,
of investment in
why are you
renewable energy,
resisting-
in the clean technology sector. Thousands of jobs are at risk.
But it makes
Will the
it
Leader of
seem
the
like
Opposition stand to this House, Madam Speaker, and
whatever
explain to us
either
whether or not
party
he
does
supports
makes
clean
it seem
energy or
like
not?
the other party is much deeper into the
Yes,
black
I know
or
the honourable
white
members
than they
there.
are.
Just want to
where
remind members
they're
to please
all
keep the tone
kinda
down while someone else
fishing
has the
in the
floor.
gray.
The honourable member for Regina, Wisconsin.
Right? Do you not
Madam
think that?
Speaker, according to Food Banks Canada, nearly 7 million Canadians are struggling.
I'm just
with
wondering.
food on the
That's
table.
what I think, but
That's
maybe
because
I'm
farmers pay the
mistaken.
carbon tax
Share,
on
like,
the
let
food
me
they
know.
grow.
Straighten us out.
Truckers pay the carbon tax on the food they transport. Grocers pay the carbon tax on the food they refrigerate.
Yeah.
And all of
On
those carbon
taxes.
taxes get passed on to the consumer. Madam Speaker, will this Liberal NDP government cancel its plan to
Liberal
increase
NDP
its inflationary
government.
carbon tax?
Bloc, Quebec, Bloc, Conservative government.
Fire Chief Rowland of
Coalitions.
Kelowna said another thing that stuck with me. He said Kelowna spent more than $20 million battling the summer's wildfires, and that insurance losses would triple that amount. What could we have accomplished if we'd used the same amount of money proactively? Chief Rowland asked. He said money spent fighting fires.
It doesn't look good when they read from the pad, man. It just does not.
In support of
They
carbon
look
pricing, Madam
stupid.
Speaker, a proven
Just so you know,
policy
like,
designed
if
to
you're an
reduce
MP and you
emissions that
ever
are
see
driving
one of
climate
these
change
videos,
and more intense
you look
wildfires and
stupid
flooding
if you're reading
all
from your
across our
pad.
nation and
Like,
all across the world.
what the?
L'honorable
Like,
député.
it shows apathy or something. Here she
for
goes. Like, she's got her
Catherine
pet.
Lecole.
She's nice. I'm sure
Thank you,
she's a
Madam
nice and
Speaker.
kind lady or whatever. But
Madam Speaker, in our hearts and minds, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation reminds
it
us
seems
to reflect
insincere,
on the
phony. Like when they're on the
consequences of
pad.
colonialism
Like,
on Indigenous people. It's an opportunity for Canadians.
do you not
to
find that?
reflect
Like,
on
it's
the
kind of
tragic
like a
history
piss off
of
to
the
me.
residential school system. This day,
In a
honors the
weird
children
way,
who
in a
never
weird way, I
returned
find
home.
it disrespectful.
Can the
Like,
minister share some of the ways that we will be
how
marking
many
this
days
day?
did you have to think about the 2 minutes or
Minister
30 seconds, not
of
even
Heritage
2 minutes,
Canada.
30 seconds, you had
thank
to
my
say
colleague
something.
From Chateauguay-Lacolle for her question. Listening to Indigenous voices and amplifying them is a way to
Some
mark the
sins
National
can
Day
be
for
forgiven.
reconciliation. On Wednesday, I had the
Pascal.
opportunity to participate in the viewing of
You
Bones of Crows, a
dummy.
series
Stop reading from the
by Mary
paper.
Clemens with Indigenous actors that tells us about the history of residential schools.
Phoebe
and
doesn't
how
read from the
Cree
paper,
people and
man.
others
Come on.
contributed to our common history. The partnership with CBC
Jean-Luc
allows
does,
the
though.
voices of Indigenous people to be heard
This
so
guy
that
right here,
together
right-
we can
right
honor
there.
truth and create spaces for healing.
The honourable member for Yorkton Melville.
Ranchers know that their herds are crucial to our grasslands, environment, food
I
security,
like your
and
pennant.
trade.
This is
Saskatchewan livestock
kinda
producers
nice.
also know that this Prime Minister is
Whatever,
not
lapel
worth the
pin?
cost.
I don't
His
know what you call
inflationary
that.
policies and stifling carbon taxes
I do.
are crippling our producers. They're stressed. Winter
Like,
is coming,
subscribe.
and they need
It's
to
just
keep
us
their
hanging
breeding
out,
herds
right?
alive.
That's all it
Time
is.
is running out.
So-
When will this NDP Liberal government provide its share of ag recovery funding?
And making fun of these bozos at the clown circus making the sausage at the sausage factory.
I thank the member
Like,
opposite for the question. And,
But
and I want to
subscribe.
agree with her that Canadian
Billy
farmers
Blair,
produce
my
some of the
man.
highest quality agricultural products around the
showed
world.
up to
And
work
that's
on
one of the
Friday
reasons our
though.
government,
One of the
alongside our
few
provinces and
liberals, I
territories,
guess, that
are
did.
investing $3.5 billion
Looks
in the
like
next 5 years
there's a
to
lot
new
of empty
sustainable
seats at the
Canadian
Parliament
agricultural partnerships.
lower
We've
floor
also
this
invested
morning.
nearly $2 billion in supply managed farmers and processors, as well as $500 million in environmental programs like the
Your
Agricultural
taxes
Technology
don't count
Program
on
and the Climate
Fridays.
Solutions Program. And Madam Speaker, I want to assure the member opposite and all members of this House that we'll continue to do everything that is necessary to support.
Yeah, Billy
the
Blair's
important work of our
making
Canadian
sure
farmers.
that
Honourable member
it's going to
for
follow it up.
Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Speaker, for 3 years, the residents of Bobcaygeon have been waiting for repairs
Bob
of the
Cajun.
Lock 32 swing
Good song.
bridge. The lack of action
I like
from
his
Parks
tie,
Canada
how it
has left the town angry and frustrated. Precious tourist
Works
dollars have
into
left along with
his
several
shirt.
businesses who just can't wait anymore. While the minister responsible is busy gifting millions to bolster infrastructure in communist China, he ignores the pleas of rural Canadians. If the minister is too busy supporting the Communist Party in Beijing, will he please hand this file over to someone who can do the job?
It's a lot of energy at
The
the
Honourable
end.
Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would actually take issue with the fact that the member is accusing one of the most respected institution in our country, Parks Canada, of not doing its job.
They
are
take
one of the
issue
most
differently
liked institution,
than
most-
I
most
would
trusted
take issue with
institution
shit.
in Canada.
You know?
I will work
Like-
with the officials of Parks Canada to ensure that this issue is dealt with in the most rapid
Do
possible
they just walk
terms.
past
Thank
each
you.
other? Like,
Member
when-
Haliburton, Kawartha
be
Lakes,
like,
Brock.
you don't have anything to say
Actually, saying
now?
The minister can't do his job because not only one bridge is out, one federal bridge, a second bridge, the village of Bolsover, 3 years and counting.
If this
no
is
bridge.
true, if this
There's
is
actually a
true,
documented
it
case
sucks
where
for those
someone died of a
communities.
heart attack. The family could see the ambulance on the other side of the road because it could not get over.
Is that
3
true?
years, 2 bridges, 2 communities cut in half.
Is
Why
that
don't the minister
true?
Do his job and get these bridges fixed.
It must be true the way he's going on.
The Honourable
Like,
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
That'd be
As I said,
really
I will
frustrating.
Be talking with Parks officials to ensure that these problems are solved as quickly as possible. Thank you.
it must be true.
Honourable member
He just
for
took it.
Windsor, sorry.
It would seem
Hamilton
like
East
I don't
Stony
know.
Creek.
I don't know
Thank you,
either.
Madam Speaker. This weekend, Canadians in my riding of Hamilton East Stony Creek and across the
Christ
country
almighty.
will honor the victims and survivors of the residential school system as we seek to address the harmful legacy of residential schools and reflect on our own commitment to reconciliation. For generations, Indigenous
Right,
peoples
it's
have kept
annoying.
their culture
The
and language
fucking-
showing great resilience in the face
the-
of
the
discrimination
pad is annoying.
and mistreatment by colonial systems.
And
Canada has a responsibility to address the truth.
you should
and
do
support
better
their
than
healing.
just the pad,
Madam
bro.
Speaker, in my community, people want to know how our government is working towards truth and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples.
Good question.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
I'm not a fan
Madam
of the
Speaker, I
pad
thank
at
my
all.
honourable colleague for that very important question, and I'm grateful to see Canadians across the country finding their own special ways to commemorate this important day.
Danica
Let me be
Atwin.
clear, as a government, we believe that truth and reconciliation
Cabinet
needs to be at
Minister.
the heart of absolutely everything that we do, and we are committed to doing the work. After Harper refused for years, we launched the inquiry into the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Today, more than 96% of First Nations have access to clean drinking water, with a pathway for the remaining 4%. After decades of neglect, we have helped communities build, renovate, and retrofit 31,000 homes and counting. We will continue working with Indigenous peoples to build a new relationship based on recognition
you're saying
of
the
rights,
right
respect,
things.
cooperation, and
You should
partnership,
just
and
say
that's
them,
reconciliation.
not read them.
Honourable Member for Windsor West.
Am I upping the bar for expectations on these fools? Yeah.
In the world to enjoy. And on TikTok, they're left out of their creator fund to be paid for their work. It's unfair. TikTok compensates its creators in the United States and Europe, but Canadians are left behind. Why are the Liberals allowing this abuse? These content creators are workers. They deserve to be paid. Madam Speaker, worker rights is my Roman empire. So will this government start working for young people, ensure Canadian content creators are compensated fairly?
I don't. That's a weird one. Weird one, Brian Massey. Like,
they're amongst the best in the world. They are sharing our stories, every Canadian stories, and it's really important that we keep on supporting them. This is why we brought forward the bill.
I met this chick at a bar one night.
This new bill,
no French accent.
None. So that we can better support
just saying, they're actors, clowns. Like,
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
A clown is more talented than a general actor, right? Like,
the lawyers representing the Sequatlam First Nation. Just in time for National Day of Reconciliation, we're violating, and I say we, because thanks to the Liberals, we own the Trans Mountain Pipeline. We are violating a sacred commitment.
Come on, Elizabeth, you could twist your desk to make the light way better.
October 2nd, the Canadian Energy Regulator provides reasons
solid
for this First Nation
lady,
to
though.
pursue its legal rights of
I
appeal.
think, I don't know. Do you know? I don't. What about Elizabeth May? She's okay, right?
Mr. Secretary.
Madam Speaker,
I don't know.
Thank you very much.
Do you know?
I know this issue matters a great
I'm
deal
sure
to our
Peter's
colleague.
going to let us know that
However,
Elizabeth
as the
is
Minister of Finance said earlier
great.
this week, it's an independent
Thank you
decision
to
that was
my
reached
minister.
by an independent agency. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, it's bullshit. They must have them on the ropes. Wrap it up, guys. Honestly.
On a point of order, the Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Madam Speaker, during statements
Here we
in
go.
the code of conduct in this House.
Gerard got it at hand
from
earlier,
the bottom
I
of my
guess.
heart, I'd like to apologize to the member
From the
for
bottom
Hall
of his
Aylmer,
heart.
Who I
Imagine
interrupted during
the
his
bottom of that guy's
wonderful
heart.
Statement.
Pretty
I
cold
appreciate
place.
That.
Woo!
I
It's
appreciate
chilly.
the honourable member's apology. I know it wasn't just him, but I do appreciate his
What are they
honesty.
talking about? Did you catch that? Like when that happened? Because I didn't.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is with a heavy heart that
I
I
don't
just
know.
want to rise to address an exchange.
Looks like that's it. So we'll flip back to this. And yeah. A lot of fun that was. That's a question period. And I have a lot of questions that come into question period. Like, what in the hell is going on here? Like, why are we the whole thing needs reform, but until we know the way to reform, watching the mistakes that we're making is a great way to figure out like how to improve it. That's it. We're out. Hope you guys are having a good evening. We are here. We're that we can work with. Plus, this is fun to make, to learn about and make fun of the. That once you see how it's made, you don't want to eat it. However, watching it get made somehow is entertaining. Anyhow, guys, like, subscribe, share, comment, all of that. We're out for now, and hope you have a good evening.